the home for intelligent Black people. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. So good to see everybody. Today I wanted to talk about something. I have a guest that should be coming in a few minutes. Hopefully he can make it. His name is Torraine Walker. And Torraine sent me a note where basically it looks like Roland Martin is getting in these plantation fights over the whole presidential election nonsense. And according to Torraine, there was a pretty nasty back and forth dialogue that occurred between the two of them regarding what Black men should be doing in this election, that somehow there is a false narrative that's being pushed to some extent because they are claiming that Black men who don't support Kamala are not for the culture and all this other stuff. And I'm going to put an end to that real quick. So we're going to break that down. Hopefully Torraine will join me. If he can't make it, that's okay. We're going to work through this together. So get comfortable, buck up your seatbelt, hit the thumbs up button. We're going to get started on drboycetv.com right now.
Here we are, clan the isms, cataclysm, great. Our people out here struggling, trying to make it in this state. Everybody out here doing it, but we the ones too late. Now family, we the ones who gotta delegate. Get that money in the power, never be fake. Stick to co-sign for 3. What did he say? Create jobs, support our own. Educate the same and buy back your home. Got 3 degrees, triple 10. 3 PhDs, now we on the CNN. DBTV, let's talk about negligence. Ignorance is bliss, but we can turn it to intelligence. Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see. Let's break it down here on Dr. Boyce TV. Here we are.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. I think that my guest, Torraine Walker, is coming in. He says that he's going to make it, but he's having technical difficulties. So I'm going to shoot him a message and ask him if he's going to be able to make it, because I really like to hear his perspective on this. But anyway, how's everybody doing today? Do me a favor. Please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe if you have not done that yet. Also, let me know if you can hear me okay. Give me a quick yes if you can hear me. I am not going to take a lot of your time, but I wanted to also remind you guys that if you want to learn Black history and understand Black politics from a Black perspective, we do Powernomics training in the Black Business School every Wednesday night at 8:30. And tonight we're going to read the book, the Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson, which follows the other books that we've read of his called one called Powernomics, the other one called Black Labor, White Wealth. Black Labor, White Wealth. Black Labor, White Wealth is the kind of book that I wish Kamala Harris would read, because if Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were to read Black Labor, White Wealth, they would understand the R word. The R word stands for reparations. The R word is the word that matters most in the Black community. The reparations word is the word that they fear. The reparations word is the word that they will not use, because they want to. They don't want to use the word, but they'll use Black people. Tell me if I'm lying. They won't use words. They won't use words that describe your struggle, but they'll definitely use you to get elected, won't they? They love it. Democrats love to use you. Republicans love to use you, but they get mad when you turn around and you want to use them. They get mad when you turn around and say, okay, now that you've used me, now that you've been using me in every election, what are you going to give me in return? And I personally will say that anybody who has a problem with Black people who have honest conversations about what we need in our community, anybody who has an issue with Black people asking for things, really they need to check themselves, because there's nothing logical about the idea that you want to support white supremacist institutions just so the little boulets can get their little Black jobs, so they can get next to what they think is real power, which is just white power. That's pretty much all it is, and feel good about themselves. I know you went to Brown University. I know a lot of these. I know a lot of these folks. I rocked with them. I got a PhD. I've hung out with all these people before, and I'm not saying that they're bad people. They're not all bad people. I get it. The Jack and Jills and and all that. The AKAs, my sisters and AKA. I respect all of that. But you got to stop that nonsense. You got to start doing things that are really going to benefit the community and do things that make sense. A Black person, a Blackish person, Jamaican, half Indian person getting into the White House really doesn't do a whole lot for the Black community, because getting Barack Obama into the White House didn't do anything for the Black community. If you look at Black wealth and where it was when Obama got elected, our ranking in wealth has not changed in the last 16 years since he got into the White House. So whatever you're getting excited about, I need to just really try to understand what it is about being accepted by white people that makes you feel better as a Black person. That's what I'd like to understand. I'd like to understand why we will fight like hell to get Kamala elected, which is fine, but won't fight like hell to protect our own communities, educate our own kids, build our own businesses, and develop our own spaces. I have no problem. Did anybody see that? How many of y'all saw that? Where there was a gathering, apparently. I guess everybody online was all proud because you got 15, 20,000 black men that got together and raised, $1 or $2 million for Kamala Harris, which, by the way, is a drop in the bucket. White people still have you pretty flooded out financially. I think she raised over $100 million. Good for her. Nothing wrong with that. These elections are all about the money. And I guarantee you, if you compare the amount of money she raised from people like APAC and her Indian heritage, because she's Indian, she's half Indian, I bet you that money dwarfs the amount of money that was raised by these black men. I'm not saying they didn't do their best. I'm not saying that what they didn't do was remarkable. I'm not at all ridiculing them, but I am going to say that when it comes time for her to do favors, when it comes time for her to pay back all the people that put money into her campaign, I find it very hard to believe that we will be at the top of the list. I find it very hard to believe that the woman who clearly stated that I'm not going to do anything specifically for black people. Have you ever, let me ask y'all this. Let's get right here. Let's talk about this. Let me ask y'all a question. This question is going to make a lot of people mad. Have you ever in the last 40 years heard a white politician ever say, well, it's not like I'm going to do anything specifically for black people? Has that ever been stated? Tell me, has it ever been stated by any politician that you've ever seen, other than the black ones? Has anybody ever heard a politician? So I want to pause right there. I'm just processing that. Can you imagine? What if Donald Trump said, I'm not doing anything specifically for black people? Or what if Joe Biden said, well, it's not like I'm going to do anything specifically for black people? What if Bill Clinton, after playing the saxophone on Arsenio, has said, well, I ain't doing nothing specifically for black people? Come on. What would they say about a white person? Come on, let's really dig into this point for a minute. And hopefully Torraine will be able to make it. If he can't make it, that's okay. I'm going to invite him again because I like him. I respect him. What would we say as a community if a white person, especially a white Republican, were to say, I ain't doing nothing specifically for black people? Come on, what if Bush had said that? What if Bush had said, I'm doing nothing specifically for the African-American community? What do you think we would call that person? It starts with an R, and it's not reparations. What would we call that person? We would call them a racist. Tell me if you agree. Tell me if you agree that if a white politician had said, I'm not doing anything specifically for black people, tell me, give me a yes or no if you agree that we would all call that person a racist, especially if they were a Republican. Do you agree? Or am I just talking over your head? I don't think I am. I have intelligent black people in the room. What do you think? Okay, so I need us to kind of really examine the double standard that we sometimes put up on ourselves. I want us to just examine how little respect we must have for ourselves for the fact that we're going to let a politician literally tell you in your face, I want something from you, but you ain't gonna get a damn thing from me. I need you to specifically vote for me, but I'm not going to do anything specifically for you. That's a little bit crazy. And I get it. I understand why you're going to lesser of two evils. Yeah, we already go through all that. We know that argument because they do make it every election. Fine, vote for who you want, but make it make sense, black people. I don't think you can. You can't make it make sense because a white man can't get away with saying that. If Joe Biden said that, people would be pissed. If Donald Trump said it, woof. But Kamala says it's like, oh well, she can't really because she's got to be represent everybody. And okay, keep going down that line of reasoning, and then see where you are in 30 years. So anyway, let me move on. Let me move on to another point here. Another interesting point that I thought about, and again, just because we're just reflecting on this election and everything else. Somebody made a point to me, my friend Dave, who is a Marine. Dave is a strong black man, great American, good human being, strong father, solid dude. And Dave said something interesting to me that I really thought about. He said, everybody keeps talking about Trump with the Central Park Five. When they want to point out how racist he is, they'll say, well, he wanted the Central Park Five to go to prison. And I said, okay, yeah, he did. Okay, and he was wrong. He was definitely wrong about that. And they said, But Kamala Harris, how can you criticize Trump for the Central Park Five when Kamala was sending brothers to prison left and right? Kamala sent a whole lot more than five black men to prison. Trump did want to send those five to prison, but Kamala probably sent 500, 5,000. I don't know what the number was, but it was a big number. And she has an interesting track record in that regard. And so what it really said to me is not so much that Kamala wasn't a great prosecutor. She might be a decent prosecutor. I'm sure she's good at what she does. She went to school. She's smart. But I'm trying to figure out why you think that um, you'll get a better deal by picking either one. If that's a concern for you, if things like police immunity is a big issue for you, which it is, and I don't blame you for that. Like, okay, Trump says I want police to have full immunity, which is wrong, right? Because we know that's not appropriate. But Kamala was a prosecutor. She worked with police. She's a prosecutor. It's hard to be the attorney general. It's hard to be a district attorney and a prosecutor if you are not getting along very well with the police and supporting the police. That's very difficult. It's very difficult to be in conflict with the police if you kind of are like really like a top cop. Okay. And so now the DA is a little bit different, but you're working with police all the time. So I'm just trying to connect the dots in terms of helping us. I don't understand all the excitement. I just don't. I don't get it. The excitement. I do understand one element of it is it's the aesthetics of it all. It's the symbolism. It is the integrationism of it all. Some of us, unfortunately, still are smoking the crack pipe of integration. It's this fantasy that was sold to us, as bedtime stories when we were children about one day. The dream is that one day little white girls and little black boys can hold hands and go to school together. And so when we see Kamala and Dougie holding hands and kissing, some people love that. They love to see, this idea that we've been invited into the master's house. And that's fine. I get it. If that's how you feel, then God bless you. I feel bad for you a little bit because I think that you don't understand the value of simply being black and being disconnected from some of that. That actually sometimes being marginalized as a black person can be the greatest freedom you could ever have. I'm not a person that gets invited into those circles. Those people in the bougie circles, they know who I am. They know who the hell I am. And people in the Chicago elite, the Obama circles, they all know who I was. Because I had a lot of reach and I had a lot more power and money, influence than they have, right? They knew I was there, but to some extent I was kind of the wild bull that you couldn't control. I was not really fit for slavery. I wasn't a person that's going to go along with something just because you told me to do it. Even when I was asked to pledge every single Greek letter organization, I was invited to pledge every single fraternity. I kid you not. I specifically remember when the head of the Kappas sat down and tried to recruit me. I specifically remember when the head of the Alphas tried to recruit me. I remember when the not Zeta, Phi Beta Sigma or something. And I remember every one of them, Omega Psi Phi, every one of them tried to recruit me. And the problem that I had with that is that even as a young man, I remember I felt that there were tremendous dangers in groupthink amongst black people. I felt that groupthink was not progressive. Groupthink was not going to help us to be strong and free and liberated. Groupthink means that if all the other Negroes are going to the South, I got to go South with them because I want to be part of the group. And the challenge that you have is that the brainwashing of black people runs so super deep and the self-esteem is so super low. So if you get a bunch of brainwashed people with low self-esteem, then people won't know who they are, where they should be going. They're just going to go wherever the group is going because they want to make sure that they fit in. They want to make sure they get an invitation to the Jack and Jill meeting or that the Congressional Black Caucus event includes them or that their fraternity still thinks that, enjoys them. And I say this at risk of offending my friends that are associated with the organizations and they're great people, smart people, stuff like that. I know a lot of them. I know a lot of people in those groups and clubs, but I really want us to kind of reflect on that and realize that if you're really trying to do something that's truly progressive, you might have to be a little bit radical. Sometimes you got to make people a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to have hard conversations. Sometimes you have to go in your own direction. Even if you look at, for example, the state of the black male and just, so much negative culture that's really pushed onto black men, hip hop in particular, teaching you to disrespect women, to remain as ignorant as possible, to throw all your money away, to drink yourself to death, to get high on drugs whenever you can. All those messages that get pushed in the music. I know a lot of men who were affected by those messages, and those men are destroyed now. They're ruined now. They were destroyed by the age of 38. And so in order for me to break away from that, I had to have the courage to be my own man, even though that meant I was going to get some animosity from black people and some animosity from white people. And so really, I will say to you that what you're seeing right now with the Kamala Harris thing is right now she's got so much momentum. She's raised all this money, and there's so many people who are going to push you to do what they're doing just because everybody's doing it. And I even saw an ad where they said something like, "If you don't vote for Kamala, you're not for the culture." And I said, well, fuck the culture. I'm not part of the culture either. I don't want to be part of the culture that's backward, that's losing. I don't want to be part of the culture that's put us last in education. I don't want to be part of the culture that leads to all these broken families. I don't want to be part of the culture that made her think that marrying Dougie is better than being married to a black man. I don't want to be part of the culture that I see on BET. I don't want to be part of the culture that leads us to being last in economics. That's not my culture. That is not my culture. And if you call that black culture, then I say, how dare you? Because black culture to me can and should mean black excellence. Black culture to me can and should mean black people loving themselves. Black culture can and should mean to me that we don't just celebrate the people that white people vote for. We celebrate the black people who are actually doing the work. We celebrate the people who don't say, I ain't doing nothing specifically for black people because I'm trying to keep my trying to keep my black job. I'm working for white. I got to keep my black job. So I ain't doing nothing I ain't doing nothing specifically for black people. I don't want to talk to that person. I want to talk to the person who says, oh, here are 10 things I'm doing every week specifically for black people that don't just involve voting for a Democrat or voting for a Republican. You can't tell me that voting for a Democrat or voting for a Republican is something that you're doing for black people, or that you're running a voter drive for your favorite political party and that you're doing this for black people. No, you're not doing it for black people. It's okay for you to do it, but you guys don't say who you're doing it for. You're not doing it for black people. You're doing it for the people you work for. You're doing it for the political party. That's okay. Just make it clear. You're not serving black people. You are selling black people. You are delivering black people. And that's what the Roland Martins of the world do. Roland Martin's job is, because he's consistently working to gain favor, to get into these inner circles with these political types. That's what he wants to do. He's already pretty well connected. I think he sat next to Hillary Clinton. It's probably the greatest day of his life. And he was doing the little dance next to her and everything else. And now he sees that Kamala's rising up. I'm sure Kamala knows who he is. And he's going to get access to the halls of white power. And it won't do a damn thing for anybody but him. All it'll do is it means you might get a couple dollars put in your pocket. You get on putting your white people will put you on TV, and the condition will be that you cannot do anything that will significantly improve the condition of black people in this country. If you do that, then therefore you become dangerous. When you become dangerous, we kick you out. We boot you out, because the challenge that you have is that in order to truly represent black people, you have to criticize the hell out of white folks. You have to hold them accountable. And you can't just criticize the Republican white folks. See, because that's how the disguise works. Let me know if you understand what I'm saying. Like, you'll hear people say, no, I ain't scared to talk about white people. Look at Trump. Look at what Trump did. And I'm like, yeah, look at what Trump did. But I'm like, oh, but look at Biden. Can you talk about Biden and what Biden did? Can you talk about Kamala and her buddies and Dougie and all these other people? Are we going to talk about them too? Or are we only going to talk about the Republicans? Are we going to allow your political affiliation to hijack your racial identification? Are you going to get people walking down this narrow-minded, ignorant-ass path that says, well, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. If you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. To hell with you. Kiss my how about this? I'm gonna show you how black I am, because I'm gonna have you kiss my entire black ass. You ain't gonna tell me you don't get to tell me I'm not black. You ain't even black yourself. Joe Biden said that. He said, I mean, think about this. A white man literally says, you can't be black unless you support me. That's some Jesus shit. You can't get to God unless you go through me. Really? Is that how much audacity you have? Is that how much confidence these little Negro minions have put inside of you? Because I'm not your boy. I'm not your minion. I'm not working for you. I'm not here to serve you. And so really, when I see what's going on with Kamala, and looks, I got a message from Torraine, and Torraine's asking if we can go at 2, but I gotta let him know I have to go soon, because I've actually got some other stuff happening. But maybe Torraine will pop in. If he pops in, I'll let him tell his story with Roland. Apparently, he had a back and forth with Roland over this whole fundraising thing where a bunch of black men got on the phone and raised a couple $1 million for Kamala Harris, which I think is great. Congratulations to them. Way to go. That's good. But one thing that Torraine made this point, and also Dr. Ma'at made this point as well, and I agree with this. They said, man, it's amazing how we can get galvanized by something white folks did and go raise $2.5 million and get thousands of people on board to do that instantly. But I dare you to go find examples where those same individuals have pulled together thousands of people to raise millions of dollars to build a black-owned school, or raise millions of dollars overnight to go and do something for their own community, make their own community safe. And I find that very fascinating. And I would almost challenge them to say, you got to look at what you're doing. You got to look at how this looks. It looks basically almost like our mindset is one that says, when Massa says jump, we say how high. Even when it came to supporting Barack Obama, a lot of people don't remember this, but in 2007, Barack didn't have much support. Black folks were not going to support him because they were so accustomed to supporting Hillary Clinton. The only time that Obama started getting significant black support was after he won in Iowa. Iowa was one of the whitest states in this country. So it wasn't really until white folks started to get behind Barack that a lot of black folks started to get behind Barack. So you have to understand that for many of us, we are trained to follow the lead of white folks. We are trained to say, okay, well, if they're doing it, then it must be the right thing to do. But if they're not doing it, we're not going to do it. Or if CNN is talking about a police shooting, we're all going to pay attention. We're all going to talk about it. We're all going to get riled up about it. But if Boyce Watkins or somebody or some black person says, hey, 109 people got shot in Chicago 4th of July weekend, that's not interesting because they're not talking about it on CNN. They're not bringing that up. And it's black on black, most likely. So that means it wasn't real. That means those people really didn't get shot because they got shot by black people. Now, if they've been shot by a white police officer, we'd be bug-eyed and outraged. And, oh, Lord Jesus, we gonna kill it. This is ridiculous. This is crazy, right? But they get killed by gangsters and thugs and the people that infest your community. Then it's like, yeah, 109 people shot. Yeah, whatever. But then you will start crying when white people market George Floyd to you as if that's the only black man who's been killed in the last 40 years. I need you to understand this. I need you to understand how you get your cues from that so-called higher power. You get cues from other people. You don't really know what you should be outraged about. You don't know what you should react to because, again, you have a group of us, many of us, I'm going to say us, so I'm not vilifying anybody. A group of us that are brainwashed people with low self-esteem. Brainwashed people who have low self-esteem can be guided around like sheep. So in this election, one thing you can expect is a ton of re-traumatization of black people. Every police shooting is going to get heavily marketed on CNN. It was specifically done in a certain way where even when Joe Biden, when it was time for Biden to step down, when he clearly wasn't qualified for the job, I found it really interesting how the media shifted against him. Did anybody else notice that? The media started to really say things about him that they normally would never say about the president. And then as soon as Harris took over, the energy shifted, and then that allowed her to go in and raise $100 million very, very quickly, which was, I think she set a record or something like that. So effectively, this manipulation is very systematic. I think it's done very deliberately. I think that there are going to be two types of people. There are people who are going to hear it and say, wow, you're right. I get it. I see what you're saying. And then there are going to be people who just get mad, who just get angry about it. Oh, you hating, you be hating. And that you be hating sort of language, that's language that says you're not cool because you're not doing what everyone else is doing. You're not following the crowd. That's what because even a lot of people that support certain politicians can't really tell you why they support them. They only do it because everybody else is doing it because they feel like that's what the culture is doing. So right now, the culture is pretty excited about Kamala. They keep saying she's going to be the first black woman in the White House, which is really not completely true. I'm going to give, because her father's Indo-Jamaican or Jamaican, whichever one, I'm going to give her that Jamaican side of her family. I think that's very real, but she's not African-American. And if she were African-American, she would not be allowed to run for president. Also, if she were married to an African-American, ain't no way in hell she would be running for president of the United States. And I dare anybody to prove me wrong. I dare anybody to prove me wrong. Now, I think I got Torraine in here. Let me see if I can bring him in. Hey, brother, give me a nod if you're ready to bring you on stage. You ready, brother? I think Torraine can hear me. Let me see. There we go. I think he said, okay, let's see. Here we go. Hey, Torraine, how you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. Apologies for the delay, man. I had some stuff going on that I had to fix.
That's okay. That's okay. I kept the conversation warm for you. I've been talking about you the whole time, so I bet your ears were burning. How
Yes,
you
sir.
doing, man? Nice to see you in person.
Good. It's a pleasure to meet you in person too, Dr. Boyce. I'm doing well, man. It's been an interesting past couple of days regarding this whole political situation we're in and the way people are going to war for Kamala about this is wild.
Yeah, yeah, man. Well, you know what? Everybody, as I just quickly before we begin, I want you to know I'm talking to Torraine Walker. Torraine, Walker's your last name, okay?
Hmm.
And Torraine is I wanted Torraine to come in because he's a smart brother. He does a lot of good stuff on Twitter. He's very active. He does a lot of research, and he cares deeply about us. And unlike the politicians who will go out of their way to tell you they're not doing anything specific for Black people, Terrain does a lot of things specifically for Black people, and that's what makes him valuable in this space. So, welcome, brother. Very good to see you, man. So, tell me this: you and Roland Martin had a conversation on Twitter. I tried to read it. You sent me the link, but I forgot Roland blocked me on Twitter a long time ago. I don't
Oh,
know if you
really?
know me and Roland got a history going back to like '06. We were on CNN together, me and him and Wendy Williams, I think. And it's been downhill ever since. so it's
Oh,
so
wow,
Roland, yeah,
wow.
Roland blocked me, because he doesn't, but I don't dislike him as much as he dislikes me. But he's but I think that his concern with me was probably the fact that I have, in many occasions, kind of said you're kind of a political operative. You're behaving a little bit problematic in terms of being a little bit too much in bed with the Democrats. But I'd like to get your takes. What was your experience? What happened on Twitter?
Well, what happened on Twitter was Roland chaired this meeting. Basically, it was a fundraiser for Kamala. That was a fundraiser that was driven by Black males. It was also piggybacking off of one that was done by Black women in sororities, AKAs, D9s, the day before, where they raised, I think, $1.5 million for Kamala's campaign. So this was a fundraiser that brothers in those same circles raised, and I think they came up with, like, last numbers I saw was like $1 million. So I made a comment on Twitter where I said that it's interesting that we can raise $2.5 million for a political candidate, but you have grassroots activists who are struggling to make money. And that wasn't a dig at them, what Roland and them did, but I think he took it that way, and I think people who were part of that campaign took it that way. The point I was making was that we as a collective always have all these obstacles in place. So we say we have obstacles in place when we're trying to raise funds for things that we say we care about. And if people in those organizations can raise $2.5 million that quickly, then that means there's money in our neighborhoods and there's money in our communities that we can raise for things that we want to raise. We just don't raise it for some reason. So that was the point I was making. But all the quote unquote elitists got mad at me and called me everything but a child of God. And they said that, I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm cleaning up a lot of this for your audience. But yeah, it was an interesting evening, but at the same time, it was like half of the people understood what I meant. The other people had an issue with it.
Yeah, well, Roland is very, very, very sensitive. That's and so really almost to the point of being a little bit bitchy at times. And I remember kind of when he met with King Randall. I don't know if you know King Randall, the young brother out of Georgia, who is a problem
Oh,
solver.
absolutely.
Yeah, King Randall's getting
Shout out
it
to King
done.
Randall. He's doing real work. I love that brother.
Yeah, yeah, he's done more at his age than a lot of these guys have done at the age of 50. And King Randall engaged with Roland, and because King Randall was not a shill for the Democratic Party, and he just kind of said we need to do things for our community. Roland tried to just rail in on him, and I was very offended by the idea that this 50-year-old grandfather would go off on a 22-year-old who's trying to do his best, 23, whatever age he was. And when I saw that, I instantly called King Randall and I said, I'm gonna send you a check for $3,000 for your school because I love what you're doing. And I don't, and I said, don't
Mhm.
listen to these crazy old heads that don't know what's going on, that don't respect youth, they don't respect the community, they don't care about doing the right thing, they only care about getting into the halls of power. And many of them are just arrogant divas, and that's what Rolly. He's a diva. So I will say, man, yeah. From what I did see, I think you made a very logical point, and it almost seems to me. You tell me what you think. It almost seems to me that this reflects the fact that we spend money on the things that we want, but we don't want to. We don't spend money on the things that we really need. Like or we'll spend money doing things on behalf of massa, but we won't spend money on ourselves, our community, almost like a self-esteem issue. What do you think?
I think there's two things that are at play here. I think that the Democratic Party is so used to having a full capture of the black vote. And I think this is the first time in maybe like in a generation that you're hearing black people starting to really dissent against some of the things that they've been having to put up with and tolerate. And I also think parallel to that, there's a situation, and I talk about this a lot, where you have a lot of black elites, or as I like to call them, Negro whisperers, or the gatekeepers, the people who feel like they're the people you're supposed to go to, and any sort of power, any sort of demands you have to the power structure to speak truth to power has to go through them. With the advent of social media, you're hearing people who are just regular people, ordinary, everyday people, being able to voice their concerns and build a platform. And I think that scares the hell out of a lot of these gatekeepers and Negro whisperers because they don't no longer, you don't have to go through them. You don't have to go through Stephen to talk to Calvin Candy anymore. And I think they don't know how to deal with that. And I think that's part of it. So I think there's two things at play. A lot of times, the Democratic Party can't count on a 90% voter capture anymore. And the Negro whisperers can't count on being the people that you have to go to and genuflect to be heard. And I think it's both beautiful.
Yeah, well, it almost seems to me that, to your point, that if I am a Negro whisperer and my claim to fame or my validation is dependent upon my ability to deliver black people to the politicians. They present them as black leaders, but really I call them Negro managers. Their job is to manage black people, like almost like you gather up sheep and you deliver them for slaughter. Al Sharpton, I think, was probably one of the best on earth at this, and he did a great job of delivering black folks for Obama. And during the Obama presidency, you saw Sharpton getting access to the halls of white power in ways that a lot of people previously had not. And it's interesting. You mentioned that with social media, now that you have a lot of people, particularly black men, people that others are not accustomed to hearing from, who are building these big platforms and just sharing their own perspective, whether you're talking about a Tariq Nasheed, yourself, myself, even somebody like a 50 Cent, who I don't agree with 50 on a lot of stuff. 50 gets a little bit out of hand with it, but just this idea of these black men kind of saying, you know what? I know what my mama said that she's going to do. I know what my auntie and my sisters say they're going to do. But I got a big problem with this guy because he incarcerated a lot of men like me. He'd sent a lot of my friends to prison. I'm not good. And also on top of that, you're not going to get my vote for nothing. It seems like that's causing almost like a gender divide in the community as well. What do you think?
I think that's something that's been going on for a long time, but you mentioned the gender divide, and I'm kind of known for talking about that a lot. I think the Democratic Party or the establishment Democrats have basically written off black men. I think a lot of the messaging is geared towards black women, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing of it is, if you're trying to reach a voter demographic or a voter block, you cannot separate one from the other and then have one side that the one you're catering to and platform people whose whole messaging is black men are bad and black men are ignorant and just shut up and vote along with black women and don't ask any questions, because as a rule, we tend to be analytical and we tend to ask questions about the things people want us to get on board with. And you can't get upset with people if they have a history of not wanting to vote for somebody because, as you said, they may have had to deal with somebody in their family going into the system because of somebody who may be black but still doesn't care about their issues. Or they may have to somebody, or their economic base may not be strong and they want some tangible results as far as their economic base, whether it's for jobs, whether it's for building infrastructure in their communities, and they can't get anything but the runaround, and they get a lot of platitudes and fish fries and pop locking, but they can't get any hard evidence and they can't get any hard tangibles. You can only, it's real, man. I talk about this a lot. No other demographic of people gets pandered to the way black voters get pandered to. It's like, if you go to any other, and I've done this as a journalist, I've shadowed political campaigns and seen how they move in different populations. When they go to Latino populations, when they go to LGBTQ populations, when they go to Jewish populations, they rent out a hall, they come in a suit, they have their agenda written down. They may have some music, but when the music's over, they're going to sit in front of that podium and give them some platform policy. What do we get? We get pop locking, and I'm so sick of the electric slide to the point where I hate the electric slide. I grew up dancing to the electric slide. We get chicken, we get I'm serious. And we get fish fries and stuff like that. And that's good to draw people in, but you got to give them more than that, man. And I'm tired of it. And I know most of our people are tired of it. and also it's condescending because you're saying that our people don't have the intellectual sophistication to be able to understand hard policy points when that's not the case. We built a lot of those policy points, and we have to get out of that. And it's crazy for people who claim to be Negro whisperers and want to be our gatekeepers want us to just shut up and be happy with that. I mean, how are you serving your people if that's what you're doing?
Well, it's interesting because, you had the whole conversation about black jobs, and being a Negro whisperer is considered to be one of the best black jobs because you get to sit next to powerful white people and feel important. And it's interesting because it seems to me that that's a job that does require you to have a certain level of grounding and fortitude in terms of who you are. And most people don't really have that. And I say that because if I get in there and I have that job of being the Negro whisperer, the Roland Martins and the Al Sharptons, and I come in and I say, well, okay, the way you're presenting your message to our people is not appropriate. This is not, it's immature, it's ignorant, it's backward, it's non-productive. Well, then guess what? They're going to get rid of me and they're going to get somebody else. Right. So part of me having that job is predicated on me playing my position and knowing what this black job comes with. And this is one of the reasons why I think that those black jobs are so dangerous and why we have to be very cautious about being super excited. Like, we're not as excited about a black man starting his own business as we are about a black man who gets a job next to a popular white guy. Right. Like, you're black and you become vice president. They're going to celebrate you a whole lot more than that man who knows what comes with all that. The man who says, no, I don't want to do all that. I'm not trying to sell that. I'm trying to go out here and be independent, be free, be strong, be correct. Right. But that man's going to also be marginalized. So to some extent, to your point, when you talk about that gender divide, that's what I see. I mean, let's just be frank. When you look at the White House, you see a lot of liberal black women, feminists, lesbians, and women who have bad relationships with men, maybe a bad relationship with their father. And then they'll get on Twitter and they'll say, black men are the reason we didn't win the election. Black men need to shut up. Black men need to stop doing this. And they're disrespecting a big segment of the black community. And part of that is because these are divestors. These are honestly like the female version of the Passport Brothers. You know what I mean? Like black men ain't shit because my daddy wasn't shit. Right. And so you end up having a divide even amongst the women. You got the women that love and support black men to the end. Like my wife. My wife is like, I don't care if you don't like me. I'm gonna stand next to my husband before I stand next to Joe Biden. Joe Biden is not gonna be my replacement for my spouse. But then you got some women who say, yeah, these guys are ridiculous and they need to get in line. So it then becomes a very unhealthy power struggle that is going to have long-term repercussions in terms of how our families are built and how we can get along after this election is over. What are your thoughts on that?
No, you're absolutely right. And this is by design. These people do not get into office and they do not get into these positions without, first of all, being vetted. And unfortunately, it seems that the way to be vetted and the way to be admitted into the halls of power, if you're one of these women, is to basically be willing to throw the rest of your people under the bus and basically make your man out to be the devil. And you're right. And I keep saying I talked about this because I talk about this a lot. A lot of these women who matriculate through a lot of these places and matriculate through a lot of these industries, they come through a level of indoctrination, whether it's radical feminism or whether it's this idea that all men are evil. And those are doctrines and those are philosophies that don't come from us as a people. Those philosophies come from radical white feminism because radical white feminists have been at war with their men since the 1950s. And while they've been doing, whether it's Gloria Steinem or whether it's people of that ilk, but their issues are not our issues. And if you look at the data, because there is data that backs this up, black men, heterosexual black men, tend to be the most progressive when it comes to social issues. They tend to be the more accepting of LGBTQ relationships. They tend to be more open to like women working outside the home and being contributors in the home. And also they are a lot more open when it comes to fatherhood. There's data that's been released maybe a couple years ago that said that black fathers are the most involved fathers of all ethnic groups, whether they are inside a relationship or inside the home or divorced or outside. But if you look at social media and you listen to these people you're talking about, you would think that all black men are Mr. from Color Purple and all we do is drink and fight and leave babies everywhere. Yeah, and don't take care of our kids, and we don't give a damn about anybody but ourselves. Now, we know that's not the case, but if you're not from the culture and you don't know any better, then of course you're going to go along with what the people who've been uplifted in the community, which is this small cadre of black women, and they say that that's what's going on.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I would say, following your point, man, it is interesting. I mean, I think the black man gets heavily misrepresented, particularly through just music and media, right? We have some guys in the hip hop space that live lives that are completely different from a life that I would want to live, and they get this impression that all black men are kind of think that way. And so one of the things I'll say too is when I see what's happening with the politicians and how they've really catered their message to black women because they feel like black men are kind of a lost cause. It reminds me of a time when me and my sister were talking to this guy who was trying to sell us a timeshare. We were both on this trip, and they got us locked in. If you ever sat with a timeshare salesperson, it's excruciating because they're so good at selling. They make you buy stuff that ain't worth what you're paying for it. So we're sitting there, and I just saw through it. I was like, no, I'm not interested. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. And it's funny because my sister was kind of listening, and the guy was persuasive and had charisma. So she was kind of listening a little more than me. But I was like, nah, man, I'm sitting there with my arms folded, like, you ain't getting my money. So then when he
Hmm.
realized that I was a lost cause, he then focused and he turned toward my sister and starts focusing on her, right?
Hmm.
And here's what's interesting, right? So the guy's going in, he's trying to charm the sister. He ain't even talking to me no more. And then because I'm sitting there thinking, well, if you want to buy it, go for it. 'Cause my sister got money. And the guy, and what pissed the guy off to no end was when my sister said, well, if he ain't buying it, I'm not buying it either. If he changes his mind, then I'll change mine. And that comes from a respect that my sister has for me. I've always been the head of all my siblings. I'm the oldest. I like to believe I've conducted myself in an appropriate way because I always knew I was a role model. So there's that respect. Now, this is what I see from some black women who understand. They hear black men when we say, look, I can't vote for somebody who was trying to get me locked up in the 90s. I can't vote for this person who sent all these black men to prison. I'm not, or what about me? Like there are women that really hear that, but then it comes down to that respect piece, right? You do have because of things like the crack epidemic, war on drugs, and what happened to broken families, a lot of, in my view, brokenhearted women who were let down, particularly by their fathers or other men in their lives. And so the respect for black men has dropped in some spaces where they're kind of like, well, since these Negroes ain't gonna do the job, I'm gonna become the leader. We are the alphas. We are the leaders of the community now. So I do see a power struggle there. Like I do see a scenario where there are women that just get pissed off at me because I'm not going along with whatever the crowd's doing, and I'm like, no, I got a different issue from you. I can't support the Democrats because they did a Adolf Hitler extermination on the black male back in the 1990s Joe Biden crime bill, and I'm not going to stop talking about that just because you think everything's okay. No, I know I got friends that are still locked up from stuff in the 1990s. So this is not something I can get on board with. So let me ask you this, man. So in
Hmm.
terms of this election, who do you think is going to win, and what do you think is going to happen, like kind of going forward with this?
Oh man, honestly, get ready for your mentions to blow up. I think the way things are now, I think Trump is going to end up winning this election, and I will tell you why. There was already a dissension in the Democratic Party with Biden in office. You had people who were concerned about his health, but even before that, people were concerned about his cognition, and people are also concerned about the fact that there were a lot of policies that were getting passed that were anathema to what they came in on because he said he was going to come in as a caretaker president, but it ended up becoming more of an activist presidency than people wanted to admit. There were issues with illegal immigration that honestly dovetail with a lot of the things that Trump was already doing. There were issues when it comes to like the black voters. There were issues when it comes to even LGBTQ rights, which for the most part people don't have a problem with. But what happened was a lot of people who have the most extreme points of view were able to get at a seat at the table and have conversations. And if you're trying to win over a majority population, which tends to be more middle of the road and conservative, you have to be very careful with how you put your messaging. And if you have people out on the White House lawn getting naked and everything, you're going to have issues.
Mm,
It's a small thing, but it's a big thing when you're talking to people who are not in that beltway. But as far as like the election, I think the fact that Biden dropped out and there's almost been this sort of rush to a coronation to put Kamala in office. There's creating dissension in the Democratic Party. And I think this conversation between me and Roland and other people who have been talking is indicative of that. there is really a small civil war brewing in the Democratic Party, and I don't think they're going to be able to reconcile a lot of these different factions that are at each other amicably by November. But the one thing I can say about the Republicans is the Republicans never let a crisis go to waste, and they know how to get in lockstep with each other to win.
Hmm.
That's the one thing that the Democrats don't have. They're trying to be everybody's friend, whereas the Republicans don't give a damn about being your friend. They're about winning, and that's the one thing that the Democrats lack. And I'm telling them all that to say that, at the end, I think the way if things continue the way they are, if they make Kamala the nominee, I can definitely see Trump winning this election.
Wow, that's heavy. That's real interesting. There are a lot of people who believe, Torraine, that Kamala's already the president, that Biden just isn't even able to do the job, and that they're going to even announce that she's going to take over as president because Biden may just step down from everything. Have you heard anything like that, or what do you think of the possibility of that happening?
There's a lot of rumors floating around in media circles, but there's nothing definite. But from what I've been hearing is that we're almost living in sort of like a rehash of Wilson's presidency. You remember when Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, I think in 1919 or 1920, I believe. I'm probably wrong on my dates. And his wife, Ethel, ended up becoming basically the de facto president.
Wow.
They're saying that Biden, again, there's no proof of this, but allegedly his decline is to the point where like Jill was basically running the country at some point. But I can tell you that there has been some upheaval in the White House staff because Jill Biden's staff and Kamala Harris's staff have been at odds with each other. And nobody knows what may happen with that battle. We don't know if they make Kamala the nominee, is Jill going to use her influence to bring her staff and her influence over to Kamala? Are they going to fight each other all the way to the nomination? I don't know. It's still up in the air now. It's hard to tell.
Ooh, oh man. Okay, so last question I'm gonna ask you then, because I know you're really close and you follow this closely. Um, I noticed that Barack Obama hasn't endorsed Kamala yet. Is there a reason for that? Is he saving it for the right moment, or are they still negotiating? What do you think's going on with that?
I know that Barack is very much in tune with how to make an entrance and work, milk an
Mm,
audience. I personally think he's going to wait to the convention so he can come out and make a grand splash and do it that way. I know there's pressure on him to do it now, but there also might be pressure on him because, with the Barack and Obama endorsement, you can't lose. But I
mm,
also think he may be waiting to see how the process is going to play because, like I said, there is a lot of contention about the process. A lot of people feel like they don't want Kamala to be coronated already. They want
mm.
to have a caucus, they want to have a referendum. And Chicago is looming, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think he may be waiting to see her get officially nominated and see what that plays out. And if then that happens, maybe on the second day of the convention or maybe the last day, he'll come out and do that.
Wow. Wow. So Terrain, let me ask you this. Thank you for joining us, by the way. Everybody, this is Terrain Walker. His Twitter is right here. Everybody should follow him. He does a great job. Tell us about your background. What is you said you mentioned journalism, or what is your professional background?
Yeah, my background is in journalism. I was in mainstream journalism for about 7 years. I worked for the Huffington Post for a while, and I found a lot of stories for the Huffington Post while Ferguson was going on and while the protest movements were going on. From that, I moved into doing freelance journalism and just doing journeyman work for like a lot of different outlets. And in 2019, I formed a company called Context Media, basically tell the stories of people who are marginalized and don't get heard. Because there's a lot of people who, again, who are outside of these elite circles who have excellent stories that need to be told, but because they don't have access to the White House Congressional Dinner, and they don't have access to HBCU funding, and they don't have access to fraternities or whatever, they get ignored. And I feel like those people are the people who are going to really shift the way things are moving in this country. You can see it right now. If that wasn't true, people wouldn't be trying to silence them. So that's what I
Mm.
do now. And I'm also working on a documentary about the 10th year anniversary of the the uprisings that happened in the wake of Mike Brown. And I'm
Mm.
working on a book. I've been waiting on this for a while, and I've been putting this off for a while, but I'm working on a book that I hope to have finished. I'm sitting on the title right now, but it's going to be about some of my background growing up and what drew me into the work that I'm doing now.
Oh wow, that's great stuff, man. That's great. Well, I appreciate your work. I want everybody to know I don't the people that watch this platform know I don't have a lot of guests on, and I was happy to have you in because I respect what you do, and I know you're doing the right things for the right reasons. And I just want to apologize to you in advance for any of the crazy shit I might say that differs from what you might believe. But I believe in the one aspect of democracy is to have divergence of opinion and for us to learn from each other, as opposed to competing, right? So yeah, so really, there's really nothing you could say on your Twitter that I would ever have a problem with, even if I didn't agree with it. I would look at it and say, okay, maybe I need to consider that point of view. And I would encourage everybody, all intelligent people watching, I think that's the best. That's how you proceed properly. I don't care who you vote for. Vote for who you want. It's your right. Just tell me. I might ask you to explain it to me though, and I think that's the part, Torraine, that bothers me is how many people do stuff and can't even tell you why they're doing it. I'm doing it because so and so did it, or because the culture is telling me to do it, or my grandma told. Stop telling me you're doing it because somebody else told you to. Be a damn leader. Lead your own life. So I'm gonna let you get the last word, actually. So in terms of this stuff with Roland, this engagement, okay, so y'all had the back and forth about the fundraising thing. What do you think happens now? Like, what do you think Roland Martin has at stake with this whole situation with Kamala, possibly going to the White House? My belief is that you have people that are always jockeying for position, right? Like, okay, if I deliver in a certain way, if the person gets more power, then I'm going to rise with them. In fact, that's how, a lot of people don't know this. That's how, in my view, Roland became who he is now. He's a very successful journalist, by the way. But he became successful because he was local in Chicago, and he latched onto the Obamas. So as the Obamas rose, he rose. That was when I first met him on CNN in 2006, 2007. It was at the same time Obama was rising. His stock was going up at the same time. So CNN was calling Roland a lot because he had those connections. I see the same thing happening here with Kamala. What are your thoughts on some of that?
I've been a guest on Roland's show quite a few times, and me and him have always had a pretty good relationship as far as like politically and as far as like respectfully. I was a little bit shocked with the way this went down, but I think what's happening is you're right. There's a lot of jockeying for position right now because this election is up in the air, and a lot of people want to get that Negro Whisperer spot. But like I said earlier, what people need to realize is that a lot of these old rules don't work anymore. A lot of these old methods don't work anymore because there is no one Negro that everybody has to go to and genuflect towards to be able to get their points across. There's no longer Martin Luther King. There's no longer even an Ed Bradley. If you want to keep it on their level of journalism, there is no one person like an Ed Bradley or a Gordon that somebody has to go to. Everybody can be their own journalist and everybody can make their point across. And I think people who don't understand that and don't get out of their own way are going to end up falling by the wayside. But it's not just one person. It's not just a Roland. There's a lot of people out here who are deeply invested in this idea that you have to go through them to be heard. And the people are telling you that I don't have to go through anybody to be heard. I can be heard for myself and I have my own voice. And also, I don't need your elitism trying to tell me that I need to listen to you and what I'm saying is stupid because you don't agree with it. No, my voice is just as valid as yours. And if you keep on like this, you're going to be thrown to the wayside, not me.
There you go. Yeah, did I ever tell you I was invited to be a Negro Whisperer? I think back in the day. It didn't take them long to figure out I wasn't the right guy for the job. But
they came at you too. I got the same invite a while back too. It didn't work.
Did you? Yeah. That's not a job I'd want, man. For me, I still remember I didn't understand why Al Sharpton was so eager to introduce me to the president of MSNBC. He mentioned it, and I thought he'd forget about it, and then he mentioned it again, and then again. Then the next time I finally met him. And I remember I didn't even know what was happening at the time. I just figured it out probably 5 years later. But there was a point where I didn't agree with Obama and I didn't have a problem expressing the disagreement. Me disagreeing with you doesn't mean I don't like you. It just means I don't agree on that point. And I remember he was getting calls from Valerie Jarrett, who was Obama's right-hand person, about this guy, Boyce Watkins. And next thing you know, Sharpton's on the phone talking to me like I'm a little kid, and like I'm somehow under his control. And I'm like, who are you talking to? I don't let my daddy talk to me like that. Like what is happening right here? And that was when I think we realized it wasn't going to really work. And then there was another interaction where when I was with AOL Black Voices before they actually got eaten up by Huffington Post, I remember getting calls from the Obama administration. There was a guy who they have the press secretary, then they have the other little baby press secretaries that connect to different strands of media. So whoever the black guy was that talked to the black influencers would call me. And I was interested in the conversation at first because I thought they were calling to find out how to best serve the black community. And it didn't take long to figure out that they weren't calling. They didn't want to know what I thought. They didn't care about what black people wanted. They were there to tell me what message I needed to carry for the president to the black community. And once again, it's same process. I'm like, I don't work for you, and neither do they. They voted for you. You work for them. You do know that, right? And that's when I started to because I was politically naive. I was, as smart about it as you are. And I remember kind of saying, this, it ain't supposed to work like this. They put you in office. You're supposed to serve them now, but yet you're somehow acting like they all are here to serve you. And eventually I just told them, don't call me anymore. And in my third experience dealing with the White House was a little more confrontational. I worked with Russell Simmons, and Russell had approached me about this, and we did a campaign where he asked me to write a letter to Obama asking him to change his incarceration policies on crack and powder and all that, and what it had done to black men. So I wrote the letter. The first version I wrote was very honest. And Russell asked me, he said, can you make it a little bit gentler? And I said, sure. So I rewrote it, made it, not so scathing, more politically correct. I'm not very good at that. I just like to tell it like it is. So we send the letter and they kind of ignore it. But then what happened was we went and got a bunch of people to sign the letter. So the same way, Roland gathered all these black men to make a statement on behalf of Kamala, we gathered lots of people to make a statement on behalf of the mass incarceration policy. So Russell got a bunch of celebrities all the way from Lil Wayne to Will and Jada to even the Kardashians, people like that. And I got a bunch of scholars and activists, HBCU presidents, all that. So we got over 100 and some signatures on this letter. And the whole time we were gathering these signatures and the letter was gaining momentum, Russell was getting more and more pushback. The White House was livid. They were so angry. And I said, why are they so mad about this? Isn't this what they already said they want to do anyway? And he said, yeah, but they're mad because we're making them actually do it. They're good at just telling black people what they want to hear, but they don't actually plan to deliver anything. Right. And this is me just giving my honest reflection on this story. So to this day, I will always give Russell credit because, I wasn't a celebrity like him. I'm not Russell Simmons. I wasn't in those circles. He got booted out of all of that. He got stopped. They didn't invite him to the White House Christmas parties and all that, like they do all the other celebrities to get him on their side. And so long story short, what set it over the top, where we bullied them into making their move was Justin Bieber. Believe it or not, Justin Bieber tweeted out the hashtag in the letter, and it became the #3 most trending hashtag in the world. And then they were forced to act. So at that point, they made the biggest announcement on incarceration policy they've made in 20 years. I was super proud of that. And we really changed some lives with that. But what stunned the hell out of me to this day, Torraine, was how hard it was. I said, damn, if it's this hard working with your friends, I can't imagine trying to deal with your enemies. Like I didn't know politics was that dirty. So my point, what I walked away from that feeling, Torraine, and I'm gonna let you get the last word, man, because I talk too much on this. But I walked away from that experience realizing they have zero respect for black people. And that's me sharing my honest experience with that. I was stunned. Go ahead, man, please. I'll let you get the last word, brother.
No, brother, this is good information. This is stuff I didn't know, and the people need to know this. Here's the thing. There is this level of entitlement, condescension, and arrogance that, unfortunately, because I've seen this myself, so I know what you're saying is the truth, that you see in a lot of black people who've been successful and they've been able to elevate themselves into the halls of power. This is not all of them, but there is this, I don't want to put on a tinfoil hat, but there is this cabal of people who feel like because I've made it, well, then everything must be okay for everybody else who's black because I'm where I am and the people around me are okay where I am. But it's very much a bubble. And a lot of them don't understand that people outside of their bubble are still struggling. There are people who are, the people who are catching the bus to go to work, the people who are trying to struggle and work 2 or 3 jobs to keep the lights on and keep the rent paid and everything. The things that they're concerned about are not the same things that these people are concerned about. You know what I mean? They're concerned about looking good. They're concerned about, going to their dinners and putting on their suits and everything and drinking expensive champagne and looking good for each other and looking good for the power structure because they want to have access to the power structure. They don't want the power structure to kick them out, which is why you're having these issues right now between like disgruntled black voters who are growing by the day and people who are connected to the power structure and connected to the system, either through jobs or through, benefits and that sort of stuff. Those people are not the same people. And if you let those people tell them, it's just like, it's honestly, man, I hate to say it, but it's no different than the plantation where you have, like Malcolm talked about, the house Negro and the field Negro, where you had the field Negro out there taking the lash and out there sweating and slaving and being brutalized. And then you got the house Negro wearing master's hand-me-downs telling him he was a good, fine master and don't do nothing for the people out there as long as I'm all right. You feed me, so we all good. You know what I mean? That's what it's about, man. And I hate to say it, but they got to get out of the paint. I think a lot of them have worn out their welcome, they're worn out their usefulness, and we got to rotate some of these people out of there. I'm talking about people in the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm talking about people in media. I'm talking about people who are aspiring Negro whisperers in the HBCUs. It's time for some of these people to go, man. It's like, Shady Pines is calling you. Biden's not the only one who needs to go sit home. Some of y'all need to go sit home too, and you need to go bring in some new people. Every other group brings in new people and new blood. We're the only people who will sit there until the casket gets rolled in and you got to get rolled out. It's time to stop that. They got to
There you go. Right on, man. Well said, brother. Well said. Everybody, this is Torraine Walker. His Twitter is right there. I hope y'all will go and support him. Numbers matter. Having followers. I think Torraine, I saw he has 71,000 following you on Twitter, which I thought was great. I know how much work that takes, and so I hope everyone will support this brother. He's sharing good information. He's Black first, and I respect you, man. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today, man. 100%. All right, and also, for sure. And also, I appreciate all of y'all. And don't forget that tonight we are going to do Powernomics training at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to join us for Powernomics training, also if you'd like to join what I call the Freedom Challenge, which is basically 30 straight trainings on economic elevation that I've done. As you guys know, every single day we do a free class on economic elevation every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. We compile 30 of those trainings, put them together. If you text the word freedom to 87948, I will send them to you one by one so that we can elevate our economics, because I don't care who gets elected, Democrat or Republican. We got to get our money right, and we have to keep our families tight, and we got to build our community in the right way. And people like Torraine Walker can help us get that done. So feel free to text the word freedom to 87948. Hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe. We will see you soon. Take care, everybody. Peace.
Peace.